Aloha mai. My name is Jenny Silviger. I'm the state law librarian here in Hawaii, and it's such a pleasure to welcome you all to the Big Read event. The Land is a Canvas with Solomon Enos. I'm so excited. And just to circle back, the Big Read is a celebration of poetry, art, and storytelling funded by the grant from the National Endowment of the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest. And this year's featured author is U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo. So again, I'm so excited to be here. It's such a pleasure to welcome you all here and to introduce you to Solomon Enos. So I'll have a brief introduction of Solomon Enos, and then I'll turn it over to him. And then hopefully at the end, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and I'll keep an eye out for them. And hopefully we'll have time to address them at the end. So I'd love to share his beautiful words. This is from Solomon Enos for his introduction. Having grown up along the Wai'anae Coast within a family that is heavily involved in cultural preservation and community building, Solomon Enos has said that he has personally witnessed the variations on the theme in Joy Harjo's work, from crippling grief to profound compassion. And he's especially drawn to Joy's consistent acknowledgement for the land where she stands and the people she stands with, who are part of the water and the sands and the soils below. Her deep sense of awareness for narratives woven into every expression of life, animate and inanimate, is something that Solomon says sits comfortably within the values of his ancestors. And Joy's holistic vision of hope moves beyond the definition of us and them. And reflecting on her work, Solomon says, helps give him access to the whole spectrum of the human condition and can expand his talent and his capacity to create and manifest a new and much more noble definition for what it means to be human. So thank you so much for sharing your words, and I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, awesome, awesome, awesome. Aloha, 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 everyone. Aloha ka'awa kea kākou. Mahalo for this opportunity to visit with you all today and to share my passion for storytelling and storytellers and all the mediums that they use to convey these stories. And really quickly, I hope to be able to share a lot of content with you folks, a lot of images. I'm going to be taking you all on an adventure through a little bit of Hawaiian mythology and storytelling, and then we're going to go cosmic, and then we're going to stay very grounded in what it means to be human, what it means to be alive, what it means to be part of this planet that we're currently on, and all the, and I'm gonna try to relate it to all the heavy narratives that are unfolding as we speak right now in Ukraine, but it hasn't just been Ukraine, it's also been Yemen and Syria and Sierra Leone and all these different conflicts and all of these different challenges. There is a kind of a theme that I've been playing with for a long time, and that is we are the problem and the solution. So we are on the threshold of figuring out what it means to be human. And once we do that, or once we begin to figure that out, we are going to be unlocking just entire worlds within worlds of good, noble, meaningful existences. And so I'm going to start with a very quick introduction. I'm originally from Wai'anae. My parents went up into the back of Wai'anae Valley right around the time I was born in the late 70s and early 80s. And working with all the, I believe the term is at hope youth, as opposed to at risk, at hope. Working with the at hope youth, working with the adults recovering, who are in recovery in every sense of the word. And they were predominantly Hawaiian. And we went up into the back of Wai'anae Valley. And as we cleared the land of invasive plants, of old cars, of pulled up all the rubbish out of the soil, beneath were all these ancient taro fields. Beneath were all these lo'ikalo and all these agrarian sites. And it was like, wow, there is a deeper story here. Like a archivist or a restorer, we've removed one layer of the painting to reveal below there is a story below this painting, and it's a rich and profound story. And let's let's pick it up where we left off from that previous story. And so what I witnessed, though, as people healed the land, they were healing their own story. They were healing the story that they were telling themselves, right? And I think there's such an important narrative there. And so having had a chance to digest a bunch of Joy Harjo's work, I just found like, oh my goodness, there are so many parallels within indigenous communities across the Americas and across the world and across, the globe. And so one of the areas that I really appreciate, or even just when she introduces herself, when Joy gets up to talk story, one of the first things she does, she says, I want to thank the people who helped to install the electricity. I want to thank the people who helped to manage who clean up after everybody when everybody goes home. I want to acknowledge all the janitors. I want to acknowledge all the, just that level of deep mindfulness kind of reminds me of when we growing up, we make sure we acknowledge everybody in the room. Yeah, not just the executives and everybody, we acknowledge everybody. And I think that kind of deep mindfulness is a reminder that when we talk about changing the world, when we talk about changing our communities, we got to really begin with community number one, right? Or ahupua'a number one. What is the status of this story of yourself? What is this? What is the health of our community or our family? And so what I realized as an artist from a very young age, I thought, wow, just like I see in Joy's work, was this idea that we can change, if I can change a piece of paper, if I can change a canvas, then I can change my studio. And if I can change my studio, I can change my house. If I can change my house, then I can change my neighborhood. If I can change my neighborhood, I can change my community. And if I can change my community, I can change my island. And if I can change my island, I can help change the world. But changing the world, not just for myself, right? That's trouble. Changing the world in a way that is beneficial to everyone, always. And as an artist growing up, and really a digester of stories, I would spend many, many days going to Wai'anae library. And I still remember the hum of the air conditioner and the quiet, and just crawling into a book and absorbing these narratives that within this object, within this space, this here was an entire world, worlds within worlds. And I also fall in love with book covers. And so I would pick up a book and I'd be like, wow, if I looked at this cover long enough, I could probably get a good idea of what this whole book is about. And so what I really wanted to reinforce in this talk today is that there are some amazing best practices when we think about how we tell stories and the power that stories have to change the nature of ourselves, the nature of our communities, the nature of the world. And one of the little tips I like to share, and I promise I'm going to get to the art in just a little bit. I kind of forget that you guys can't see what's in my brain. I'm like, oh, you can't already see the art? Oh yeah, that's right. But one of the little tips that I've learned growing up, and it is to apply the narrator's voice. And so these are this very simple life hack. If I'm ever in a situation where I realize that I don't want to be here, this is not my situation, this is not what I want to have happen to me right now, I'll say, and I'll go to kind of a quiet place when nobody's around. I'll be like, and just when Solomon was about to make a bad decision, he realized that this was not his story. And he walked away and he left those problems behind. And he moved on and he changed his expectations. He changed, I would go on and on. But basically, I would evoke this secret narrator voice because I would realize that this isn't how my story goes. No, this isn't my story. This is another story. I'm going to leave that story behind. And that's such a powerful thing. And another little life hack. And these are things that are all related to libraries. So I'm going to keep it related. Whenever I have an invasive thought that is not helpful, and this you guys can do this anytime. It's immediate. Whenever I have a thought that is judgmental, that I know I don't need to be thinking this right now, I go, shh, I shush it. And it's funny because all of a sudden I go, I'm in a library of myself and I'm shushing because that's not what I need to be thinking about right now. So shush thyself is a really good technique for when there's a thought that does not need to be there, shush it. So anyway, I'm going to now do a deep dive into my passion for telling stories. And so with that said, I'm going to go right into my share screen. Okie dokie. And here we go. Okay. What we see here is a mural that I recently completed, well, maybe a couple of years ago. I completed in Kamapua by the H Mart, kind of by Down to Earth. And it really sums up a big part of what I've been doing as an artist, is to look towards nature as an example of what does hope look like. Trees and plants. I grew up in gardens, so that's a big part of, again, growing up in the taro fields, growing up in gardens. Every flower is an expression of hope. So I created this image, and what it is, it's all these humans, and they're blooming. They're blooming from one generation to the next, one generation to the next. And it's a reminder that if we ever feel like we need hope, find a tree, find a flower. Every leaf is a map. And if you study it long enough, you will find your way back to who you need to be. And so this is just that I think of science fiction and fantasy, and when I explore these ideas, that's something that our ancestors have been doing for a long time. And we call it mythology, or we call it, folklore. But what they are doing is they're creating parallel narratives. And I like to think of it almost like a splint. When a bone is broken, you run a narrative that runs parallel so that we can realign the bone, so that we can realign reality. And so that's why authors like Octavia Butler and Ursula Le Guin and Kurt Vonnegut, they do science fiction by default. So the rest of a big chunk of my talk today, I'm going to be focusing on is mo'o. And so here we have mo'o, and mo'o in Hawaii are our they're mythological creatures, but I know that word is a little bit problematic, so I'm just going to kind of use it as a placeholder for a better word. But what they represent are these guardian spirits that protect not only our fresh water that flows through our communities, but they also protect the stories that flow through our communities, information. And this, as we can see globally, what's been happening over the past few years especially, is that we see how easy information can become a medium for toxicity. Water can become polluted, right? And we want to drink that fresh water. And so I'm going to be trying to do something here. I'm going to be scrolling through a bunch of these images. I probably loaded way too much art for this talk. So I should only be spending a minute per image. I have been drawing mo'o, and as soon as I finish one mo'o, another mo'o emerges in my mind. I'm a huge fan of all kinds of artists, but I go back to Hieronymus Bosch and Peter Bruegel, the elder. These guys were using artwork as a way to, as allegory for some other deeper issue or some kind of other deeper problems that were going on in society. And so here I have these powerful mo'o wahine, and predominantly the mo'o were female. And they arrived from Ku'ihelani, this magical island, with as an entourage to Mo'oinanea, the queen or the greatest of all mo'o. And they say that when Mo'oinanea arrived on Hawaii Island, the line of mo'o behind her was so long that it went all the way back to Kauai. And every stream in Hawaii has a mo'o associated. Just about every water feature. And if you think about it, the mo'o are both beautiful, they're alluring, but they're also deadly. They're also extremely dangerous because they protect the fresh water. You do not go up to the source of the stream and go make any kind, right? If you pollute the stream, you will affect the health of everybody along that stream and everybody downstream of you. And so these mo'o are really put there to scare the wits out of us, right? We're supposed to be terrified of them because we should be terrified about how, and that maybe better way to put it, is deeply respectful to our fresh water sources. And so I wanted to repopularize mo'o, to get people to think about where is our fresh water coming from. And this is especially poignant when we think about, the impact to our aquifers, during recent events, thinking about mo'o as these magical creatures that are connecting us to this deep responsibility that we have. And, a profound, water is magic, right? That's the, I almost like to go back into like the Silmarillion, when, water was the language of the gods. It was like you could hear the beginnings of the world if you listen to water trickle, and I just thought so when I was reading like these books, I was like, there's so much connection between Hawaiian culture and all of these other mythologies and all these other narratives from around the world. And so I created these mo'o. And what's really important to think about the word mo'o is a thread that connects so many critical parts of Hawaiian culture. If something was arbitrary, if it was frills, it got thrown over the canoe. It got thrown overboard. We didn't bring it on the canoe. Yeah. What made it to Hawaii were critical strategic ideas and concepts. Protecting your fresh water on the canoe, protecting the fresh water where on your new islands, on the islands where you will now become connected. So mo'o forms the word for mo'oku'auhau. Mo'oku'auhau is your genealogy. Mo'olelo, which is the topic of our whole event, mo'olelo are stories. Mo'oheheu is culture. Yeah. And so mo'opuna is grandchildren. So we came from a story, we are a story, and one day we're going to be a story. And that's all that's going to remain of us, is the idea of who we are. And mo'o are the continuity that connects us. And so here, they're slightly terrifying. They're fierce. I've been putting these humanoid faces into this, anthropomorphic, these alo, right? And again, alo is the foundation, the root word for aloha, right? You're in the presence of the story. Mo'o are meta. They are the story. And the storyteller. And I think there's something that related it to being, RNA and DNA, both the story and the storyteller. That's the very foundation for life itself, is being both the story and the storyteller at the same time. And so these are strange and surreal. I also, one of my favorite movies was Le Planète Sauvage, right? Or the Fantastic Planet by René Laloux. And it was a film done in 1973, it was as a protest against the Russian occupation Czechoslovakia, and a protest. And so that whole animation, and if you haven't seen it yet, it's just amazingly mind-blowing animation. We need more animation like that that are basically allegory, right, for what it means what it means to be human now in this new strange digital age where we have connectivity like never before. And so what is the role of mo'o in contemporary world? What is the role of stories? Who are the storytellers, and what stories are being propagated? And how are these stories having an effect on our communities? So the mo'o are here as a reminder that we can edit the story that we're currently in. There is an exponentially better story than the story that we're reading right now, that we're a part of. I don't think we crawled out of the oceans all those millennia upon millennia upon millennia ago to end up like this. Yeah, this is that we're in the waiting room. We are on the cusp of something, to borrow a little bit of Stanley Kubrick, something wonderful, right? I mean, in context of all the suffering, we are on the cusp of something wonderful. And in fact, there is a whole nother ocean that we are about to crawl out of, right? All the other fish, those many moons ago, all those other fish that were looking at, we were the idealistic fish. We were the ones that are like, I think there's something beyond this shoreline. I think there's something. And all the other fish were like, yeah, go ahead, figure it out. And so the very first fish to crawl out of the ocean, they were like, wow, there is something beyond. Those fish got eaten. But the next wave of fish and the next wave of fish that eventually all crawled out into the land and made their way up into the forests, those are the mo'o. That's where we came from. Those are the early landmarks we sprung from. And so I sincerely cannot run out of ideas, because I just go study phytoplankton for a little while. And I'm like, ooh, that's a new shape. Oh, that's a new color. That's a new form I can experiment with. And luckily, we've got all kinds of phytoplankton. We got, as an artist, I toggle between telescope, microscope. I pan out to see the big picture. I zoom in to see the microscopic. And then I have appreciation for everything in between. And so when I draw these mo'o, I start with a silhouette, I start with a form. They manifest themselves. They pour themselves into my onto my canvas or onto my Bristol board, heavy duty paper, which is what I'm usually drawing. These are all pencil. These are all pencil on Bristol, which I then for these here are all digitally colored. Just so that I can keep the image quick and fast and sharp, and so that I can keep the original pencil, because very often the original pencil is holding, the soul of the original idea. And so, very often with these mo'o, the most difficult part is coming up with poses. So it's always got to find these new interesting poses, but they're part insect, they're dinosaur, they're part queen, they're part all these different kinds of creatures rolled into one. And if you look, every one of them has got this slightly intimidating, slightly creepy look about them. And I like to think of it as kind of like creepy but wonderful, creepyful, and so from the mo'o, which is our narrative, it's a reminder that the land is a story. The land is the canvas. The mountains are the narrators. The mountains are telling a story. We are figments of the land's imagination. That's my hypothesis. Every single art piece I do is a question, is another question I ask, because I would like to be able to talk about mo'o in a broader sense. I would like to bring the concept of mo'o to the world. The mo'o are the water spirits. And I would love to work with like Ghibli Studio or like Hayao Miyazaki folks to help to establish our own animation studios here in Hawaii and then across the Pacific. 1/3 of the Earth's surface, we are the Pacific, but very underrepresented when it comes to movies and stories and animation and video games and all the different ways that we can share our mo'olelo. Yeah, we can talk about the nature of story and the power of storytelling. And so at this point, I'm just doing a quick little time check. I'm going to jump into Hawaiian science fiction and fantasy, which is basically working on mo'o and genealogy, or working on mo'o and working on Hawaiian mythology and working on fantastical creatures from Hawaiian legend is like restoring ancient taro patches, restoring ancient gardens. Science fiction and fantasy is learning from those ancient gardens and making new gardens, making new loi, making new fish ponds, making new places for ideas to thrive based upon the best practices and the storytelling traditions. This is a template for all indigenous cultures. And that's why I even think about it as like indigenous science fiction and fantasy, and futurism, because what I'm also saying is that we are here and we're going to continue to be here, and we're also going to thrive into the future because we have systems that have allowed us to dance with the natural world as opposed to conquer it, dance with our water, dance with our oceans. When you are dancing with somebody, you want them to be as good a dancer as you are, right? When you want to find that balance. If you're just going to conquer somebody and you beat them up and subjugate them, then you're basically taking living things and you're putting them in formaldehyde, right? Culture that lives in a museum only, and it's only meant to be observed, but not, but never alive. So I believe that the story and the storyteller can dance together as opposed to fight. So, but a few more mo'o before I get there. I forgot, I have a few more to share. And these mo'o are basically paintings. So I have to say, I have not published almost none of this work is published. And the reason why I haven't published it is because it's only coming from me. And because it's only coming from me, we can't get information from one source. There has to be a small consortium or a big consortium of storytellers that help to bring forward mo'o. So I would love to do an encyclopedia, a visual encyclopedia of mo'o, and maybe even a kua, or goddesses and gods from the Hawaiian pantheon from across the Pacific, and then even a visual guide of goddesses and gods from across the Pacific and the world. These are our original League of Legends. These are our stories. And so mo'o, and here we have on the left hand side, we have people coming to worship this mo'o, which was previously it was an entire ridge line, which it's all the trees turned yellow and it raised its head because this mo'o is being called upon for some great task. And on the right hand side, is it right? Yes, right hand side, we have the mo'o that's actually an entire island. And so we see the entire island extending out towards its back. And this is just really to celebrate this idea that the mo'o are the islands. They're the very foundations of our land. And it's even said that the mo'o were here. The mo'o represent the sentience of the land. They are the land. They are avatars for the land itself. And so this is just a fun style. I basically jump from style to style to style, and I don't publish, and I don't even really make prints of these. I actually sell my originals just because I kind of want to get the originals out into the world. But I do use social media. I've been on it for about a little over 2 years now, basically as a window into my drawing board, so that I can get as much information from people. I thrive on feedback, and in general, I agree with all of my critics. Yes, it's not good enough. Yes, it's not correct. Absolutely. I want to get correct, but in order to get correct, I'm going to have to make a bunch of little mistakes until I get there. And so I invite absolutely everybody to visit me at Solomon Enos on Instagram. It's basically setting up shop to next to the busiest water hole I can find. I'm like, all right, it's a commercial space, but I'm gonna just present these ideas just because everybody happens to be here already. And I invite folks to just look at what I'm doing. I share a new concept, a new mo'o. These are examples of things that I would share every day. Something new every day. I'm basically adding a page to my visual journal of a concept. So on the left-hand side, we have a mo'o emerging from 3 a.m. on the Pali Highway. A mo'o is emerging from the bushes. And right about that same time, there's a mo'o in downtown Honolulu on the right hand side. Or so, yeah. And so these are basically placeholders. I'm creating these simply because they don't exist yet, but now they do, and they do in this form. And so I believe, yes, now we're deep dive from our mo'oku'auhau, our mo'olelo, our mo'opuna, basically making that connection, and now I'm applying it to the future. Entire worlds. In fact, one of the things that I'm really interested in doing, I'm exploring, is this idea of what would a world at peace look like? Not just like peace for the next hour, peace for the next 50 years, peace for the next 1,000 years. Peace ad infinitum. Peace as if we could not slide back into war because we've trapped war in another dimension. War becomes a story that we tell ourselves, but it stays behind us, and it stays in bookshelves, which we can only reach during special occasions. So in this image, we have a city of silence, and in this city, there's information that gets shared, kind of like a giant library. They go and they learn, they read these books, or they read these tombs, or they are, however this information is conveyed, and people learn about a time long ago when humans used to kill each other. And the children go, what? Why? Like, we used to have tails, we used to have fish, we used to be stupid, right? But we got a lot smarter. But I can't think of a more difficult science fiction narrative, or any narrative, I mean, it just seems science fiction, where there is no real conflict. Maybe we keep looking for conflict. There isn't any. And sometimes, I think we need to be prepared for a time after conflict. But there will be always will kind of be conflict, right? Because even if in a world at peace, Hawaii is a world at peace. But if I walk down the street, there's probably going to be some form of conflict going on, And it's, so what I'm aspiring to do as an artist is to talk about and to create these placeholders and that challenge us and say, I don't know a puzzle, say a jigsaw puzzle with at least 1,000 pieces. Imagine trying to put that jigsaw puzzle together without the box cover, without the image of what that's supposed to look like. We've got 7-8 billion pieces to this puzzle, but there isn't a unified image of what peace and justice looks like. And whether there should be one or not is a difficult challenge, because it is again, is there a version of the world that I'm going to impose on everybody else? I've learned that there's the golden rule, and then there's the platinum rule, right? The golden rule is do unto others as you would want done unto you. But that sounds like I'm going to be imposing my values onto somebody else. The platinum rule is to do unto others as they would want done unto them. So treat people the way they want to be treated. That actually means we gotta go and talk to them. We have to have a conversation. And so in some of my science fiction concepts, I create this narrative where, what if Hawaii was never interrupted? What if all indigenous cultures were never interrupted? What if we all had these animist religions and systems, and we actually averted a huge amount of stupidness, and we actually skipped straight ahead to an exponentially more harmonious world? Here I have some kind of creature or a deity being born. Here it's a skyscraper-sized cocoon. I have no idea what's happening here. I don't know. It's strange. It's basically these images, and there's a little person, and there's like a little minder or a gardener or somebody that's coming along to do something. I don't know. But I do know that this world is a world at peace. Yeah. And if you meet somebody who's healthy in their body, in their mind, in their soul, first of all, you should get to know them. But most importantly, that's one part of the world that's at peace, right? And there are dystopias and utopias that coexist, sometimes right neighborhoods next to each other, right? Right next to each other can be a dystopia here and then a utopia there. And so I think there's a lot to be said about this idea that we can craft a better narrative for ourselves. And so stories that talk about how we are going to solve the human conundrum, right? How do we solve ourselves? Solve ourselves and the rest of the cosmos, opens up. I have this firmly, in all of my stories, I don't even like the word aliens. I don't like that word at all. In fact, I'm much more interested in the idea that any advanced civilization, in order to be able to unlock the mysteries of distance, right? To unlock the mysteries of travel from one star system to the next, it sounds like before they even get there, they have to solve some pretty fundamental problems. Compassion, being a loving, nurturing, and connected society and species and culture, and to make sure that the entire planet that you're born on, that you're connected to, is healthy and well. Space travel is easy. If you can solve all the other kind of stuff, it sounds to me like then you have all this time and energy that you can commit to developing different forms of space travel. And most importantly, we don't take any of our bad habits with us, right? If there is a war on Mars in 200 years, then we don't deserve to be there. We don't deserve to go there unless we can learn to love the planet we already have. And that's why I'm a big fan of good old Carl Sagan. And he says, if you want to get into the stars, if you want to go into space, you start in your communities. Because the community, and I'm paraphrasing, but it says the communities are an example of what your space travel is going to be like, right? You can build the most advanced spaceship, right? You can build the most amazing canoe, but if the people on the canoe don't know what it means to marshal their own humanness, then that spaceship, that canoe won't make it, right? The human compassion in general is technology number one. Where is the device, right? I can speak to anybody on Earth with this device right here. But what am I saying? Yes, I can connect. Where is the device that helps us to manage our ego? I need that big time, right? That would be a wonderful app. But I think we do not depend on that. We need to figure out another way. But I don't know. That's the kind of technology I would love to do. See, so here in these images, I love this idea of far future humans looking back at us and judging us, kind of saying, "Hey, hurry up, because there is an exponentially better world than the one we are currently in." And I feel like, I guess part of where all these images are coming from is that I feel these futures. And it's a little bit of a mantra that I have. And it's like, how much do we love our great grandchildren or nieces and nephews? How much do we love our great grandchildren? How much do we love our great I keep this up for half an hour. Great grandchildren, right? How far does our love travel throughout space and time? Because we may not be the people who unlock the mysteries of Neptune, but our love is going to help us to get there. And maybe it's by then we'll be able to ask Neptune, how can I apply the platinum rule? Neptune, what would you like? Do you want life, or do you already have life? Are you fine? Okay, well then we'll just ask Pluto, and we'll keep going, and we'll keep asking, like, hey, who wants life? You want life? Right? No? Okay, next. Because there's a lot to the mystery that we are basically drooling into the keyboard of an amazing computer that we haven't even turned on yet. And that's why I feel all these ages yet to be staring back at me and saying, hurry up. Death is actually time travel. And we will be in all these different places. We will be part of it. And that's, I want to be part of I don't want to be part of a dystopia. No, I'm good. I think we got 31 flavors of dystopia. I think we're done with that. I'm doing my own time check here. Oh, I'm definitely gonna not be able to get all my images in today. Fantastical spaceships that are made out of living creatures and beings and part plant. Human beings, we come from haloa, the long breath. One big long exhalation. The breath that goes on for millennia upon millennia upon millennia. And haloa is the taro plant. So we come from a plant, and I like to think of this in this future, that we return to plants, like the opening image. We have humans that have become part plant. And so I get to, basically, I have my own net streaming service. I close my eyes, and my own imagination are these endless series of episodes and episodes. And I've been a world builder, world grower, in a different connotation. And I encourage absolutely everybody start working on their own stories. Yeah, the big read, and then the big write, and then the big make, and the big produce, and the big cultivate, right? So reading is like inhaling, writing is like exhaling. And one thing I share with everybody, I say, if you spend 1 hour reading, or if you spend 1 hour watching television, or if you spend 1 hour listening to somebody else's music, or if you spend 1 hour playing a video game, spend 1 hour writing, spend 1 hour thinking of your own movies that you want to make, spend 1 hour writing your own music, spend 1 hour designing your own video games, right? I think what ends up happening is we inhale, and we forget, exhale too. And we need that balance between reading and writing, digesting people's stories and working on your story. And if you can share it and other people want to read it, great, but it doesn't matter. Get to know your internal landscapes. Every single one of us, I get to basically do a deep dive. I dive backwards down into my own ocean, and I swim down, and I find something, wow, and then I swim up, and I put it on the boat, and I go, and I pick up something, and I go, and I put it up there. And so every one of these offerings, all of these drawings, are these things that I found in the depths of my own imagination. And if other people can find that useful, I say, actually, this is great. I bring this up so that you are inspired not to look at this, but to think about what's in your own ocean. Do your own deep dive into you, right? And that's gonna help all of us to solve the human conundrum, one human at a time. If you can solve yourself, then you've contributed at least 1/7 of a billionth of a problem. You've contributed a little bit to that conversation. So here we have strange science fiction-y characters. I actually began some of my narratives in war, because even though, say, we have indigenous populations that were never colonized, well, they were already colonists didn't bring war. We were killing each other and doing all the kind of stupid things like that for a long time. So we already have to work on that concept. So actually, I like the idea of creating robots and monsters and things that look like the mainstream robots and monsters, but it's bait. Because once people take these stories, they're like, oh, this is cool. I say, okay, yeah, there was a culture that was at war, yeah, but eventually they stopped killing each other, yeah, because peace and peace without end, and fascination and wonder is as alluring as violence and destruction and war. In fact, peace and wonder and mystery is much more sustainable, right? And if there's anywhere to put our fascination, I think we should put it there. And so fantastical creatures that are, I love this idea that human beings actually connecting with all of these strange creatures. And I mentioned before that I don't believe in aliens because I don't think that, because I do think that all of life in the cosmos is connected. All of life in the multiverse is connected. And so in these stories, we have these navigators that are unlocking the mystery of space and time and learning to communicate with quasars, which then entire planetary systems begin to reorganize themselves as they were intended to. The entire galaxy, there's something Asimovian here, but I like to take it a little further and say that the galaxy wakes up and it's like, oh, wipes the Wakapia from its eyes and goes like, oh, wow, phew. And then all the galaxies begin to awaken. And this multi-galactic form begins to become created because that was what's supposed to happen. So in my stories, I think of the planet, our Earth, being a map to the cosmos. Every leaf, every current, every rock, every droplet of water is influenced by cosmic, by gravity somewhere. Everything in the multiverse is connected. So there's nothing arbitrary. And so a human culture that learns to read the Earth like a map then realizes that the rest of the cosmos becomes something that we can access. And all these strange, I like the idea of smell travel, smelling our place from one part of the galaxy to the next. And dream travel. I've been playing with this concept of dream space. And what it is that what's supposed to happen when you fall asleep is you then go online, you enter into a collective chat room with all the other dreamers, and people can have basically like Zoom meetings when they're sleeping, and they can communicate with each other. And when you wake up, you're like, okay, I just had my meetings while I was sleeping, and now I can go and I can act because now I'm awake. And I'm playing with this idea as if people have been dreaming for millennia, but they didn't know that dreaming was you're supposed to call other people and you're supposed to connect with other people while you're dreaming. That's why we dream. So it's like we all have radios, but nobody's turned them on yet, right? Or nobody's tuned them into any station. And we're all just listening to static right now. So what these humans learn to do is they realize that dreaming becomes how we stay connected, as we become a single consciousness when we sleep. And when we awake, we are individuals. And when we're asleep, we're one. When we're awake, we're individuals. And trees are the power lines, or are the connectors that connect all of our different dream spaces together. So there's giant entire cosmic forests that are linking together dreamers who then dream themselves from one part of the world, of the galaxy to another. Very much influenced by we have in the story of Pele and Hi'iaka, Pele dreams herself to Hawaii Island. She's in Hawaii Island and she dreams herself to Kauai. And in Kauai, she manifests herself. And the men in Kauai say, wow, look at this beautiful woman. And Pele says, wow, look at that beautiful man. And the whole adventure is her sister in real life going to claim Lohiau and bring him back from Kauai Island to Hawaii Island. So Pele was already dream traveling. And that's why I was like, oh, I'm going to take this ancient mythology and I'm going to, basically extrapolate on it. And so here we have human seed ships, humans turned into seed forms that then drift across the cosmos, blooming as they go. And I sincerely cannot run out of forms and shapes. As soon as I do one of these, about 4 other shapes emerge. I cannot possibly keep up with my own imagination. This is also why very often I will be having a conversation with somebody and I won't entirely be present. I'm sorry. I'm having, it's like I'm constantly having about 7 or 8 people talking to me at the same time. And it's a wonderful problem. You know, it is an absolutely shamefully wonderful problem. And here we have humans that who've landed on far distant asteroids and are blooming. And this entire asteroid becomes a garden, and the gardeners are part human and part flower. You see, growing up, I had the absolute best conditions. My father had gone to had graduated from the University of Hawaii with an art degree. Came back out to Wai'anae to teach. He realized that as a matter of triage, before we could get to the art, the land and the people needed, there needed to be a better picture than what was going on. So he went to work on the land, and I picked up all of his art books and his passion, and absolutely they said, if you want to be an artist, be an artist. Absolutely, go ahead. I'm like, great. So I have not given back as much as I possibly can. I create one image like this more or less every day, and it's just a constant reminder that there is a time after this. There is a time after suffering, injustice, persecution, exploitation. There are times after this, and they're going to be wonderful, right? And we're going to get there. And a big part of it is because I'm just, my ancestors, they knew these islands existed, right? They knew it. Even before we got here, we could smell this island. We could see the birds, clouds, all the signs were there that that's on the horizon. I smell a better world than the one we're currently in. It's delicious. Ooh, I might be hungry, but I know there's something beyond where we are now. And every image I create is one good solid paddle. And then another image is a good solid paddle. And I know that this one paddle can be exponential if I share this image and other people realize that, oh, we can paddle too. And there is such a wealth of joy, personal, deep contentment that I get when I create and I share this. Not only do you get to basically produce your own movies, you get to watch the things that you want to watch from your own imagination. You get to share it with everyone. You get to share it with the world. And I think that for me is such a big deal. It's such an important thing. So here we have humans that have landed on far distant eco planets or exoplanets and also ecologically minded exoplanets. And we're creating these instruments. And when we play these instruments, the entire planet begins to resonate like a giant instrument itself. And songs begin to spread out across entire star systems, and entire star systems become instruments. And it becomes like this music that permeates throughout all of space and time. And it's a music that wanted to be there. It's a sentient sound and sentient colors. The whole idea, I'm glad I have a whole nother hour with you folks to talk about the nature of consciousness, right? Now, I'm coming down to my last few images. So there's about 30 different stories that I'm working on right now, about 40, actually about 500, and they keep multiplying. This is a whole series. This is like yet another off branch, another narrative of what if Hawaii maintained its sovereignty and we had our own kingdoms. And we had, and this is something that I think is hyper relevant to right now. We create these peacekeepers, but we have these technologies that end war. Like we set up like force fields, or we do like careful strategic sabotage of disarmament. And we have these agents that are actually traveling, using these different kinds of robots. And again, I want to bridge out to people who like giant robots, right? I want them like lovingly, like bait. I want to say, hey, look, cool giant robots. Yeah, right on. Because they're actually working to demilitarize the planet, because they've created these technologies that make war obsolete. Cool. Yeah, giant robots. Right. So it's almost like I want to create something that's delicious and nutritious, because eye candy is rot if you don't eat, if you don't add nutrition, right? If it's just eye candy, it'll lead to mind rot. So I really believe in this idea of creating these stories. And here we have like a clockwork Kamapua. Kamapua he's a shapeshifter. He can turn from a boar to a man. And he's basically our classic anti-hero. He is the problem kid, right? He is the delinquent kid. He is the one that basically gets into trouble all the time. He is also the new growth after the destruction of the lava flow. After the destruction, he is the new growth that comes up. So he is a problem and the solution. He is very human, right? So here I have him, and he's like this, clockwork agent, and he's going in and he's actually sabotaging entire weapon systems and entire communication systems of aggressive armies that are invading independent nations, and so allegory, right? So I think of this sort of storytelling like good science fiction and fantasy is like the insulation around the live wire. There are real problems that are so horrific that if you were to touch it, you would get shocked, right? There are images and things that if we see them, we leave permanently disturbed, right? So we create allegory as sort of like gloves. So we need to touch stuff. We need to get engaged with something, but we don't have to touch it directly. And I think good stories allow us to indirectly engage with what we need to stay engaged with. And also humor and laughter and wonder to help us to manage all the heaviness and all the suffering and the tragedy. And so entire worlds made out of insects that are ecological insects, that are robot insects. This is a whole nother narrative about why, and I think Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about artificial intelligence in a way that is quite profound, because he nails it when he says basically, how can we make anything worse than us? Right? I mean, and honestly, I think that any form of intelligence would be great. we need more of it, right? So ultimately, I love this idea of entire planets made out of benevolent machines that are they're like insects, they're like dinosaurs. They're actually propagating themselves, but they're doing such an amazing example, they're of managing their water and their resources. And so it becomes sort of like this idea that it could be that computers, it makes me kind of want, I wish maybe some giant benevolent computer overlord could step in. And I know I'm asking for trouble. I know. So I'll move on. But needless to say, these ideas, they keep pouring in, and they're all symptoms of this much larger concept, and that is there is a better world than the one we're currently in. We are in a cheap knockoff version of reality. There's actually a richer, real, made with real cheese reality that we are on the cusp of, and it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. A whole nother conversation about the idea of native gods uploading themselves into cyberspace and becoming benevolent artificial intelligences and interrupting money flows around the world from authoritarian governments and authoritarian people. And so and that message is it's a black and white drawing of a world within a world, within a world, within a world, within a world, and every single one of them loving worlds. And so it is now officially 1:00. I've gone way over my time, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to return back to you all. Oh, is everybody still there?
Yes, we are all still there, Solomon. Thank you so much for a wonderful talk. We do have a couple minutes if anyone has any questions. I'll check out the chat to see. I just love the whole presentation, Solomon, your artistry, your stories, your sharing. I especially love the part about how we make space for the inhaling and the exhaling. So I'm looking at the chat, I did have a question, and I was wondering about this in cultivating this brave new world that we can sense And I think I could smell it too. I think it would be very delicious. What are your thoughts, Solomon? This would be one question about in our world here where we're so overloaded with information and overwhelmed. Do you have a quick advice on how we can make space for diving deep in our own oceans? I know a lot of people seem to resonate when I was looking in that chat. Do you have something you might have a suggestion?
Well, real simple, create a sacred space in your living environment. Think of it like an altar, yeah? And it could be a comfortable chair, a nice reading light, a radio to listen to NPR or whatever, right? And what's important, and the power of audiobooks, right? I know it's a big read, but we can read with our ears. Yeah. Listen, and this is the key, and draw at the same time. Or create or write. It's a bit trickier to listen and write. I understand, and it's probably trickier to listen and to play music. That's why the best case scenario, which has worked really, really well for me, is that easily for the past 22 years, I've been listening daily to public radio or world service. I've been gleaning what's been going on in the world, and then I've been changing a piece of paper every day, basically engaging with my own imagination, my own narrative. But I think creating a sacred space in your home for creation and protecting it, and going to that sacred space, it's almost because that's actually your doorway into you, right? And have all the things you need that you need to be comfortable, but create that comfortable, safe space for you to create. Or it could be your reading nook. It could be a place where you absorb information. Yeah. But I do think that the idea that you take the time to start working on your own narrative, start working on, we can all do world building. I think that's something that's really, really important. And yeah, I love it.
I love it, Solomon. No, I think it'll be so helpful for everybody here. Thank you so much for sharing. We just so appreciate all of your contributions to this narrative of art and reading and love and creating a new world. Mahalo, everyone, for coming. Please double check. There's all these great Big Read events. I think there's a next session at 2:00. I saw that it was posted in the chat about where you can register for more events. But Solomon, just thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Solomon. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Big hearts to everyone. Take care. Aloha. Bye-bye. Okay, I think we stopped.